Coming up on this episode, the Warriors fall to their worst loss of the season at home to the Brooklyn Nets on Monday night. I'll have all the recap from the game, including a couple of bigger picture things that the Warriors might need to quickly address. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Apologies for no post-game live yesterday. For those of you that are unaware, these home games at Chase Center, they usually finish for us in Australia around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had to be down at the pub by 5:30. And so that was probably a good thing, being able to go down and have a few beers and try and forget about the final 18 minutes of that game, because it was a disaster, an absolute disaster for the Warriors over the final, really 19 minutes, I would say, after they had an 18-point lead with 7 minutes remaining in the third quarter. Very, very disappointing. Clearly the Warriors' worst loss of the season, a 128-120 defeat to the Brooklyn Nets at home. The Nets on the second night of a back-to-back after beating Sacramento the night before. Look, Saturday's loss against the Spurs was very disappointing, obviously led by 17 there late in the third quarter, ended up losing by 10. That was a 27-point turnaround. That was obviously really disappointing, but I could afford some excuses based simply on, third game in 4 nights, 3 different cities during that stretch, second night of a back-to-back after only just beating the Pelicans the night before. I could understand and appreciate that loss. The Spurs are also quite good. I think they're over 500 now. They're quite good. So I could understand that. But coming into this one against a depleted Nets team, second night of a back-to-back, back on your home floor, I just expected a bounce back. I expected the Warriors to win and hopefully win comfortably. And that obviously just wasn't the case. And we get another situation here where they look reasonably comfortable in the third quarter and things just fall apart rather dramatically. It was kind of a game where there was a huge swings in momentum on a couple of occasions. So you think Brooklyn come out, they make a bunch of threes early, they go up 26-17, early 9-point advantage. From that point on, I think in the next 22 minutes of the game, so if you take it from 5 minutes to go in the first quarter to 5 minutes into the third quarter, that kind of 22-minute stretch, the Warriors scored 69 points, really had it going offensively, turned a 9-point deficit into an 18-point lead. Steph makes that incredible 4-point play. Next possession, TJD makes a layup. All of a sudden, it's 86-68, Warriors appear in control. From there, the Warriors nothing really worked for them. They couldn't get stops at all defensively, and then offensively as well, they began to struggle, particularly after Steph went off the floor. So you go from up 86-68 to losing 128-120. That's a 60-34 spurt from the Nets in the final 19 minutes of the game. And look, I went into this one I wasn't disrespecting Brooklyn in any way. Did I expect the Warriors to bounce back and win comfortably? Yes. But I also was acutely aware that Brooklyn entered this game with a top 10 ranked offense in the league, and that they are capable, they've got some proven guys that are capable of putting up points, a bunch of shooters, they are capable of getting on a roll offensively and making things problematic if you don't bring the energy and the intensity defensively that is required. And I think Steve mentioned that in the postgame, said the last couple of games, we just haven't brought the same energy as we have in the first, 15 games, first 15 games. Yes, they're now 12-5. They were 12-3. So the first 15 games, they just haven't brought that. The defensive intensity hasn't quite been there. And yesterday it was just a lot of, they just couldn't keep guys in front of them. To me, Schroeder, no one could stay in front of Schroeder. He was just going by guys, defense collapsing, kicking out for open shooters. And they don't have a lot of huge name guys, but there are guys out there that are capable of making 3-point shots. And they end up going 20 of 45, 44.4% from 3. And the Warriors just couldn't, even when they were trying to make a run back down the stretch in the final minutes, you just couldn't get stops. It was just impossible. And huge credit to Schroeder. He was huge. 31, 5, and 7. Again, the Warriors just had no answers for him on the defensive end. He was just going past guys. There was a couple, he went past GP Took. And these are against elite Warrior defenders. Like GP2 was out there for a while guarding him, had really no answer. There was a possession where Draymond was bizarre. Like Draymond kind of was spacing him, saying like daring him to take the three, and then Schroeder gave the slightest fake as if he was going to take the three, and Draymond just jumped out at him, and Schroeder just went right by, and there was no help defense, easy layup. Really, like, Schroeder just killed us. Like, there's no doubt about that. And it was a bit of a weird one because you think about the fact the Nets put up 128 points, but Cam Thomas did have 23 points in 23 minutes, but then just didn't come back down the stretch. Jordy Fernandez didn't go back to him. Cam Johnson, who's been huge for them, had 37 and 34-point games recently in the last 3 games prior to this. He injures his ankle and only plays 14 minutes and scores less than 10 points. So it was really a different outcome for the Nets in terms of who was putting up their points and stuff like that. And they were missing a bunch of guys as well, like a depleted Brooklyn team. No Nick Claxton, Ben Simmons. I don't know how much we want to read into his absence. Day'Ron Sharpe, Noah Clowney, Dorian Finney-Smith, and then again, Cam Johnson only playing 14 minutes. Like, there's some handy players there, like Claxton, Finney-Smith, Clowney's been good for them, and just like their size, like a lack of size as well with all those guys as well. So, no excuses for the Warriors in this game. Just really, really disappointing. The Warriors like shot the ball okay themselves, 19 to 46. It wasn't really the offense that was a worry. I mean, they put up 120 points. It was just the defense, and it's no excuse for a team that wants to be top 4-5 defense in the league to be, giving up 128 points to the Brooklyn Nets, who don't really have a superstar player. Again, they got a bunch of guys in their top 10 offense in the league, but you would have thought the Warrior defense would have been capable of being able to stop them at a higher rate than certainly what they did, and ultimately it cost them the game. So that was a rough watch in the last 19 minutes. But a couple of things from it. I think it was the first game where I've really looked at this season and thought, okay, Steve, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing with some of these lineups? And more so just a couple of the guys in terms of the actual minutes they played. The clear one is Steph, right? Because Steph played well, like 8 of 16 from 3, 28 points, but he played less than 30 minutes, right? I don't know why. Again, I'm not sure if it's the knee bursitis thing, just trying to manage him. If that's the case, then come out and say it. But he rests for 9 minutes. 9 minutes in the second half, which is a long, long time. He goes out 4.5 minutes left in the third quarter. The Warriors are up 86-77. So they already had given up a 9-0 run while Steph was on the floor in that to after they were up 18. He leaves 4.5 minutes 4.5 minutes left in the third and returns 4.5 minutes into the fourth. Warriors go from up 9 to down 4. 13-point differential there in 9 minutes with Steph on the bench. There's just no excuse to see a margin whittle down that much and not put your superstar back in the game. Like, I think in that scenario, I would have probably brought him back at the start of the fourth. You're still up 5 and say, okay, let's just try and get this game back in hand a little bit. And then ideally, Steph would change the momentum of the game again, put it back in the Warriors' favor, extend the lead out back beyond double digits, and then you might even get, like, mid-fourth, you might even get a chance to say, hey, Steph, just have a couple of minutes. Right, just have a couple of minutes on the bench. So, like, maybe, again, if that doesn't happen and the game remains tight, maybe you have to play him the entire fourth. But even if that's the case, he ends up playing 33, 34 minutes. That's not excessive. Like, that's not super excessive. That's not asking him to play 40 minutes. That's asking him to play 33, 34. It's not super excessive. So for him to play less than 30 minutes in this game, like 28 points in less than 30 minutes, quite efficient. Like, there's just no reason, unless there is an underlying injury issue that they're trying to manage, which maybe is the case because we've seen this knee bursitis pop up on the injury report basically every game for the last 4 or 5. So maybe they're just trying to manage that. But if that's the case, like, I think, tell us, because there's no reason why he couldn't have played. Like, Wiggs plays 33 minutes. Why couldn't Steph play the extra 3-4 minutes in that game? And that could have proven the difference, particularly at a time where the momentum is completely against you. Like, you got to try and ride that out. You've got to try and minimize the damage and try and turn the momentum as quickly as possible. And this is something I've mentioned a few times previously in regard to just sport in a whole, like in its entirety, not just basketball, but like every sport in the world. It's like the best teams to me minimize the damage when the momentum is going against them, right? So the Warriors in this situation giving up basically a 26 point turnaround in the final 19 minutes. Like, the best teams just don't do that. Like, they don't let an 18-point advantage whittle away as quickly and as easily as the Warriors did yesterday, or the 17-point advantage on Saturday against the Spurs. Like, the best teams find a way to just battle through the tough stretches where momentum's going against them and still be in a good position, right? That's like, a tennis player, right? A tennis player, the momentum might be going against them. They're facing a few break points, but they manage to hold serve, right? They're not playing their best, but, it's second set. Things been going against them, but they manage to find a way to get it to 4-all, right? Like, they find a way to battle through the tough and not make it kill them, not completely destroy them. And this is the thing for the Warriors, is I think you put Steph on the bench for that long, all of a sudden the momentum, like, it is completely shifted to a degree that Steph actually can't reverse it. Like, it's actually gone too far. And that's, again, it's like, Steve, why are you resting him for 9 minutes in the second half? And you've got the third quarter time, like at the end of the third, you've got that 2 minutes there or whatever else as well. So in terms of like real time, he's getting like 20 minutes of real time almost, like 15 to 20 minutes of real time of rest. And so to me, there's no excuse for why Steph sat for that long in the second half. And I think that's what really killed the Warriors. And I think the other day on Saturday against the Spurs, against second night of a back-to-back, 3 and 4 days, I don't think he rested for that long. I think he still had a pretty excessive rest, and the Warriors got completely outplayed during the non-Steph minutes in that second half. But again, I could understand that a little bit more given the situation. This just bring your superstar back out and let him try and win the game for you. And give him some kind of lead to work with. Again, like, I feel confident. If Steph Curry returns to the floor and the Warriors are in front, I feel confident that we can still win the game. But when you go from up 9 to down 4 and the momentum is completely against you, and now you're asking Steph to push uphill and actually overcome a deficit, that's when it gets really difficult. And he's capable of doing that, but it's just clearly not an ideal situation when you could have otherwise brought him in earlier when you still have some kind of lead for him to build upon. I don't know, disappointing. The other one was Moses Moody. So Moses, one of the best first halves he's probably ever played. 15 points, super efficient, knocked down a couple of threes, got to the basket a couple of times. Good stuff. And then plays 4 minutes in the second half. 4 minutes in the second half after 15 first half points. I don't know. There's just nothing should surprise us when it comes to Moses Moody and his playing time when it comes to Steve Kerr. But that's another chapter to add to the book. 4 second half minutes after 15 points. And it's not just the fact that he didn't play much in the second half. It's the other guys that were playing ahead of him where you're like, hang on, what? Like, you just, sometimes you just got to ride the hot hand. Like, and this is the thing is like, this is a deep roster, a deep rotation, which allows Steve in the first half to basically assess who's playing well, who's not, who works against this team, who doesn't. And then the second half is essentially like, okay, we'll just ride the guys who played well in the first half and look like they're good matchups against this specific team. And Moses was excellent in the first half. So just like ride that in the second. Play him more than 4 minutes. because otherwise it's like you're going to Buddy Hield and you're going to Pods and you're going to GP2 who really just like don't have it whatsoever in this game and haven't recently either. Really, like GP2's been okay. GP2 was okay yesterday, like a couple of huge putback dunks, but like defensively wasn't great, and that's ultimately what he's out there for. And then Buddy's in a real slump after his hot start to the season. And Pods maybe a little bit better yesterday, particularly like playmaking wise. He had 6 assists in the first half. But still, like, again, those minutes without Steph, with Pods as the backup point guard, weren't great, it must be said. And so, I don't know. And then Pods closes the game. And it's like, why isn't Moses out there? I don't know. It's just bizarre. But it does open up to me, like, as we start, you lose a couple of games, and obviously, there's bound to be frustration and confusion amongst fans on some of Steve's rotation decisions. Like, that is, again, as I keep saying, it's a win-loss business. Like, you win games, and then if you win games, some of the questionable stuff you do gets put aside, and it's like, it doesn't matter, we won. Once you start losing games, some of the questionable stuff you did really comes to the surface, right? And fans shine a light on it. And so you see the Steph minutes, you see the Moody minutes, and you do like wonder. You win that game and you think, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, he managed Steph really well. But then obviously you lose the game. It's like, hang on, why didn't Steph play 3 or 4 minutes? So I understand like the difficulty for Steve and how this stuff is portrayed, just simply based on whether you win or lose the game. But I do have a little bit of sympathy for him in terms of this roster. And one of my biggest concerns during the offseason after this roster was configured was that there are too many one-way players on this roster. And again, it goes down to, I was so disappointed about the De'Anthony Melton injury. Not just because of the injury and what it meant for him individually, and the injury issues that he's had recently, and this one just being another significant one on top of that, which is just, it's really disappointing for him individually. But from a team aspect, like I said it at the time, I was like, I don't think we understand how big of a loss this is for the Warriors, because De'Anthony Melton was like one of only a couple of two-way, like just genuine two-way players that they've got. Otherwise, it's really like a bunch of one-way guys. It really is. Wiggs is probably the only one that you could like reliably look at and think, you know what, he brings it on both ends of the floor and has been bringing it on both ends of the floor, right? Excellent perimeter defender, and he's scoring. Like, he scored 18 points yesterday. A couple of, like, he made a 3 late and a layup late. So a couple of those buckets came when it didn't really matter. So it wasn't a great performance from him offensively. But like, you look at 18 points on the back of 4 consecutive 20-plus point games. Like, he's playing well. He's really the only two-way guy. If you look at the rest of the team, like the rest of the roster, you're thinking about Steph. Steph's been trying defensively. Been trying offensively. Clearly one of the greatest offensive players of all time. Defensively, been trying. I'll give him that. He's been a lot better defensively this season than what he was last. But he's still undersized. He's still got limitations defensively. Draymond, shooting the ball better. Still shooting above 40% from 3, I think. But he's averaging 8.5 points a game. It's not like he's going out there and scoring you 15, 20 points. Defensive player, right? Still somewhat of a liability offensively. TJD, clearly just a defensive player. Lindy Waters the third, clearly just an offensive player. Like, not a great defender by any means. I think opposition guards are looking at that Steph Lindy Waters backcourt, thinking, I'm not too concerned with this. Let's put it that way. And then off the bench, like Looney, GP2, Slow-Mo, all really like defensive guys. They fit within the offensive system okay. Like, Loon, offensive rebounding. His finishing at the rim has probably been a little bit better this season. Slow-Mo in terms of his ball handling and playmaking. GP2 in terms of the couple of putback dunks yesterday, being in the dunker spot, occasionally hitting a corner 3. But really, like, those guys, defensive guys first and foremost, who you just have to try and plug into a role offensively. Buddy is clearly offensive-minded, few concerns, a lot of people pointing out his defensive issues over the last couple of games, in particular that play against the Spurs on Saturday where he was guarding Harrison Barnes and then he just went ball watching while I think Wemby was posting up Draymond, and Buddy Hield decided to sit down, have a coffee and a biscuit and just watch Wemby post up Draymond, and then Harrison Barnes just cut to the rim and got an and one layup, and Buddy was looking around like, oh, whoops. Like, that one was pointed out by a lot of people on social media. So clearly a lack of defensive concentration at times from Buddy Hield. So clearly an offensive guy. Pods, I don't know. Like, I don't know what you'd call Pods right now. I suppose offense is what I would label him as. Like, I don't think he's a great defender. He can take charge. He took a good one yesterday in the third quarter. That was nice, but I think, and he can rebound the ball okay. I mean, he does a lot of different things, but as I spoke about kind of after the post-game live the other day, doesn't do anything at a really elite level right now. So whatever you want to call him, I don't know, he's like his own category. And then Moody is probably, and this is again goes down to why I was so surprised and disappointed that Moses only played 4 minutes in the second half. It's like Moses is close-ish to a two-way player. Now, Steve clearly has issues with some of his decision-making on both ends of the floor, but he can clearly shoot the ball. Like, he's above 40% from three this year, and, like, he's got size, right? He's 6'5", 6'6". He's not a complete liability on the defensive end. So maybe, like, when you look at this roster, I think it probably points that Moses should be playing more as one of like the few potentially like two-way guys on the roster. Then, I mean, you look at the plus-minus numbers, and on the season, like, he's the only Warrior player that's been a negative on the floor this season, which Steve would probably point to that and say, hey, look, I'm kind of right here. He just doesn't really impact the game enough positively. He did yesterday in the first half, and that's why you ride that, and he should have played a lot more in the second half, but maybe from an overall standpoint, he's just not impacting positively enough. But, like, they're the guys that played yesterday, and there's just too many guys that are, like, play on one end of the floor and just are a liability on the other. And so when Steve's trying to manufacture these rotations, a lot of the time he's having to go to either an offensive-minded lineup that leaves you with serious issues defensively and serious holes defensively, or he's going to a defensive-minded lineup where you don't have enough spacing or shooting on the floor on the offensive end, and you're leaving way too much up to Steph and Wiggs. And so you've basically, and this was always going to be my concern, is like, you've got to actually mix and match here. You've got to either choose one thing and give up the other. And the loss of Melton, he was like the key that unlocked everything, because he was the two-way guy. He was a guy that you could put next to Wiggs on the wing, and it's like, okay, this guy's going to really hustle and play hard and be an excellent perimeter defender, and he's going to stick some shots from three on the other end, and he's going to be able to handle the ball a bit and play make a little bit for you. Like, he does so many different things. And that, like, I think that loss means so much more than what many would have foreseen when that initial diagnosis came down that he was going to be out for the season. I think a lot of us thought, you know what? We've got a bunch, like 2 threes. Like, we can replace him, like Moses, Buddy, GP2, Lindy Waters, heap of guys, right, that could replace De'Anthony Melton. But that's all good on paper. In reality, it's like none of those guys do what De'Anthony Melton does on both ends of the floor. They might do, like, Buddy Hield shoots as well, if Buddy Hield shoots better than De'Anthony Melton, but he just doesn't bring anywhere near the defensive stuff. Same with Lindy Waters, right? GP2 brings the defensive stuff, doesn't bring the offense. So again, you got to pick and choose if you're Steve on what you want, and that's why people are going to start getting restless and maybe frustrated about these rotation decisions and these different lineups. But Steve, like, I will have a little bit of sympathy in the fact that he kind of is limited with what this roster gives him, because he has to choose either between offense or defense too much. And it also goes to show you, like, these last 2 games kind of done a bit for Kuminga's stock because I think you look at some of these things, and particularly the bench unit. Like the bench unit is just like there's just not enough good offensive players. Like Buddy Hield is the only guy when JK's out. Buddy Hield's the only guy who's giving you offense, and if he's not giving you offense, then where's it coming from? Like that's the issue. Steph goes out of the game yesterday. The Warriors just cannot get anything offensively. Same thing on Saturday against the Spurs. If Pods isn't scoring the ball, then you basically got a bunch of non-scorers out there because you got any combination of Pods, Looney, Kyle Anderson, TJD if he comes back into that lineup, like just a bunch, GP2, just a bunch of non-scorers, right, in the second unit. If Kuminga's not playing and if Buddy Hield's not hitting shots, you're in deep trouble. And so that's why like Kuminga is really important in that second unit because he is a guy like can get downhill. He's a whatever you want to say about him, and he's got flaws, right? He's got flaws. He's like not a great shooter defensively, can lose concentration at times. Sometimes it allows blokes like putt by him too easily. There's flaws to Jonathan Kuminga. He's a young player. There's no doubt there's flaws there. But for all his flaws, like he's a very talented natural scorer. Like he can go out and get you 15, 20 points a game pretty easily. Gets to the free throw line a lot, right? And then defensively, like, okay, he's got some concerns there in regard, again, to his concentration, but it's not like it's a Buddy Hield or it's a Lindy Waters where those guys might struggle defensively in terms of, you know, being a step slow to getting out to guys or not being able to get, keep guys in front of them or anything like that. But at least in that situation, like JK has the athleticism to make up for it. Like if he has a lapse defensively, it's like, okay, at least I've got the fast twitch, like the athleticism. I can make up for it to a degree with that, right? I can close out to a guy a little bit quicker, even though I haven't made that read quick enough, I can get a step further out to that shooter than like what a Buddy Hield would, for example. And so Kuminga, I don't want to call him like, I don't know if you want to call him a two-way player, but it's like, okay, he's a natural scorer, even though he's not a great shooter. And defensively, he's got enough tools where if he's locked in and on the right night, he can actually be a plus defender. And so in the grand scheme of things here, as you look at the roster going forward, like Kuminga is very important. And I do think that I wouldn't be against actually going back to a Steph, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, TJD starting five. I wouldn't be against that because at least with Kuminga, it gives you another semi-two-way player out there. A guy who can score the ball, who is going, we know he's going to be a willing shooter. He's not necessarily going to be a great shooter, but he's going to be a willing shooter. He's kind of leaning on that too much probably from a fan perspective and from probably what Steve likes. He's going to be a willing shooter. And again, defensively, like he brings size and athleticism to the table, which a lot of guys just simply don't. So Kuminga's important because again, like do you start him or do you just, I don't think that will happen, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. And maybe like it's just important to get him back in that second unit, which has been really struggling offensively, really. And to no surprise, like again, GP2, Looney, Kyle Anderson, all defensive guys coming off the bench, right? Pods not really giving you much in the way of scoring right now. So like it just is what it is. Like that's the roster. But I mean, there's a lot of negative chatter here for a team that is 12-5. But I'm just trying to go over like a couple of themes, a couple of bigger issues for the Warriors here, as pertains to moving forward, not just to yesterday's game where they struggled on both ends of the floor in the final 18, 19 minutes or so. The other thing I wanted to mention here is like with Brooklyn and all their outs, like no Claxton, no Darren Sharp, no Noah Clowney. No Simmons. Finney Smith isn't a big by any means, but like he's 6'7", 6'8". No size really out on the floor for Brooklyn. Like they were starting Zaire Williams at center, who's 185 pounds. And the Warriors just couldn't take advantage. And it goes back to my idea of like, I would just like some kind of offensively skilled big man to be able to give you a little bit of versatility in a matchup like that to say, you know what, we've got this guy who is capable of posting someone up and just outbodying them, using their weight, has enough skill around the rim with like little baby hooks and post moves and whatever else. Like, it's not necessarily what we're going to go to every game, but we recognize in this individual matchup where the opposing team has no bigs whatsoever and is starting a guy that is literally 185 pounds as their starting center, like, we're going to try and take advantage of that. And the Warriors just, like, they don't have that guy. And so, yes, the Warriors outscored the Nets 52-34 points in the paint. I just don't think they got an advantage out of that whatsoever. And it actually almost helped Brooklyn. Like, if Brooklyn were going to go into any game with these injury concerns, being this kind of undersized and not having a genuine big, it's probably against the Warriors. Because as Jordy Fernandez, like, you're looking at it and you think, okay, well, yes, we're going small, but like, is Trace Jackson Davis really going to hurt us? Is Draymond really going to hurt us? Is Kevon Looney really going to hurt us? Maybe they hurt us on the glass a little bit, and even that didn't really happen. I think the Warriors got 11 offensive rebounds to 6, but it wasn't a huge, like, 11 offensive rebounds isn't massive for the Warriors necessarily. Like, they just don't have the offensive minded big man to be able to say, you know what, we're really going to utilize this guy in this game against a team that's depleted from the big man department. And again, it's not the way we want to play necessarily. Like, the Warriors obviously want to play their high ball movement, player movement style, ball moves around. Like, they're not going to necessarily say, all right, we're going to post up this guy relentlessly. Like, they're not going to want to do that all the time. But again, specific matchup against the Nets team with Zaire Williams at center, that would have been helpful. That would have been helpful. And I just think, like, again, I don't know who it is. Again, it's been reported Nikola Vucevic is available, having a good start to the season. Maybe it's him. He's expensive in terms of salary, like $20 million. But I don't know. I just like something different there from the big man position. Aside from having three defensive minded guys in Draymond, TJD, and Loon, there's just not enough difference there, and I think it hurt them yesterday where they could have done. And you know what? If the big man, if Vucevic was playing yesterday, and you say, okay, we're going to run things through Vucevic. Okay, there's a good chance, strong chance he abuses Brooklyn and plays really well and has 25 plus points. Okay, cool, great. And you know what? If he doesn't, then you just put him on the bench and you play Draymond or TJ or Loon. Like, you've still got like the options there. That, again, it's like the versatility. Now, would benching a $20 million Nikola Vucevic be great? No, but like, I don't think it should really matter. It's like, again, this deep roster, deep rotation, you play the guys that are playing well and depending on the opposition. And so, I don't know. The Warriors, there just needs to be a little bit more versatility there, I think, from the center position. It's what I've wanted for basically the last, maybe even going back to last season, really. Like, particularly during Loon struggles and stuff like that. But anyway, the other thing here to finish off with, these two losses obviously really disappointing, but they hurt a lot more when you look at the upcoming schedule for the Warriors. It's not pretty. So this is the remainder of the calendar year, right, until December 31. OKC on Wednesday. Then at Suns, at Nuggets, Rockets, Wolves, at Memphis, at Minnesota again. So they played Minnesota 3 and 4 games. Home to the Pacers and Lakers, at Clippers, Suns, and Cavs to finish off. So that's 3 matchups against the Timberwolves, 2 against the Suns, and then you've got a bunch of other teams there who are all possibly in the playoff picture. 11 of those are in the West, so you've only got Indiana and, 12 of them the Cavs at the end. Indiana Cavs, they're the only 2 in the East. 11 in the West. And against, like, genuine Thunder, best team in the West right now. Phoenix just getting KD and Beal back today, I think. And then Denver, we know they're always an issue with Jokic, and Denver just had the Warriors measure. Like, I think Denver have won 7 or 8 regular season games in a row against Golden State. Houston playing really like 12 and 6, third in the West right now. Memphis just got Jar back. Minnesota are having some issues, but we know like Ant, like they're capable. Pacers aren't great right now, but again, are capable. Lakers and Clippers, tough. Suns again, as I said, just about to get KD and Bill back. And then the Cavs to finish, who have already blown out the Warriors already this season. Like, that 13-game stretch. If the Warriors can win more than they lose in that stretch, I'm going to be happy. Like, if they go 7-6 and they're 19-11 after the 30-game mark, cool. Sign me up. Sign me up for 19-11. Sign me up for 7-6 in the next 13 games. Absolutely. All right, I'm all for it. And if they win more than that, great, fantastic. Wouldn't be surprised if they like only won 5 or 6, to be honest. Like, it's that tough. It's that tough. And from what you've seen over the past, not even the last 2 games with the 2 losses, but even the game on Friday against the Pelicans, where they like that was a second, third string New Orleans team, and you only just scraped over the line, and Trey Murphy had a shot to basically put the Pelicans in front in the final 10, 15 seconds. So, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit negative this episode, and I suppose it has to be when you've had back-to-back losses. But the positives are the Warriors are still 12-5. Positives are they were still up 17 and 18 points in the last 2 games. It's not like they got completely blown out or they were never in the game against, what we considered worse opposition. Like, they were in comfortable positions. Now, you could argue and say, oh, that makes it worse, the fact they blew leads to what we would consider inferior teams. But there's still enough here. There's still enough here to suggest that, hey, next 13 games, yep, they can go 7-6 or 8 and. I think there'd just be perfect symmetry to going 8-5 and just being 20-10 after 30. That'd kind of just be a perfect symmetry. 20-10 after 30. I think that should be the aim, right? And then if you can be 19-11, even 18-12, it's like, yeah, okay, we're still in a reasonable spot here. And there's a few of these games, like of the next 13, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at home, right? So that in itself should be, you would hope 5 out of 8 wins there. And then if you can get a few on the road, then yeah, you can win 7 or 8 of these next 13 games. But we'll wait and see. Alrighty, thank you very much for listening or watching to this episode. If you're on YouTube and haven't subscribed already, if you could do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. You can follow us Golden State with Mates on Instagram and TikTok as well. I'll be back for a post-game live following tomorrow's game now against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's going to be a big one. Hopefully the Warriors can get their second win over the Thunder already this season and return. That would put them, I think, equal record with the Thunder, who are currently 13-4 now. So I think a win for the Warriors would put both teams at 13-5 and top the Western Conference. Let's hope that can happen. Hope you guys can tune in. Otherwise, till next time.